The room was silent except for the low hum of a worn-out heater. James Carter, 63, sat alone on the edge of a motel bed, his third place to stay this year. He held a crumpled envelope in his hand. The red-stamped word, "denied," stared back at him like a wound. Once a decorated Marine who served 2 tours in Iraq, James had believed in his country and its promises. When Donald Trump took office, James was one of the first to stand up and cheer. "He cares about us," he'd told his wife back then. "Finally, someone who sees us." But today, his veterans' benefits had been cut without warning. No disability check, no housing support, no medical coverage for his wounded knee. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. His phone rang. It was the VA hotline. Again. "We're sorry, Mr. Carter, but due to new federal adjustments, your case no longer qualifies." James didn't hear the rest. He dropped the phone and buried his face in his hands. The man who once crawled through desert sand under gunfire was now begging for soup in a city that looked the other way. And across the country, thousands more just like him were starting to speak out. "I gave my legs for this country," whispered Sarah Delaney, staring out the window of her small apartment in Indiana. Her wheelchair squeaked as she turned. She had joined the Army at 18. Young, strong, full of purpose. But one wrong step on patrol in Kandahar changed everything. The blast took both legs. For months, she lay in a hospital bed, clinging to the memory of her squad singing "Home Sweet Home" in the desert. When she returned stateside, the flag-draped ceremonies made it feel worth it. Then came the promise. Trump stood at a podium in front of rows of saluting vets and declared, "No one will fight harder for our heroes than me." Sarah cried that day. She believed him. But 2 months ago, her benefits were slashed in half. Her caregiver, gone. Her physical therapy, stopped. She now relied on her teenage daughter to lift her in and out of bed. And when the new paperwork arrived, it said her level of service-related disability didn't meet the updated requirements. She didn't blame Trump. She blamed a system that seemed to shrink whenever veterans asked for help. Still, something inside her began to ache, not just her legs, something deeper. It was a Tuesday morning when the letter arrived at the White House. Security scanned it, staff reviewed it, and then someone placed it on the president's desk. It was handwritten in blue ink on lined notebook paper. At the top, in shaky cursive, were the words, "Dear Mr. Trump, please read this." It was from an 11-year-old boy named Billy Thompson. His father, Sergeant Robert Thompson, had served in Afghanistan. Came home with PTSD and shrapnel in his shoulder. For years, the VA helped, but last month the checks stopped. Meds ran out. Counseling visits were canceled. Billy wrote, "My dad doesn't smile anymore. Mom cries at night. He sleeps in the garage so we can eat. You said you would protect people like my dad. Please, can you help him? I think he's going to give up soon." Trump read the letter in silence. He didn't call a staffer. He didn't move. For a long time, he just stared at the last line. "If you can't save my dad, I'll try." He folded the paper gently, and for the first time that year, he called for a private meeting. Not with advisors, but with the people no one had listened to. He arrived unannounced. No reporters, no lights. Just a quiet knock at a small veteran shelter in Des Moines. Trump had Billy's letter folded in his jacket pocket. Something about the boy's words had cut deeper than any headline. Inside, a few veterans sat in worn chairs, sipping weak coffee. When Trump walked in, silence dropped like a hammer. Some stood, others just stared. One man, Marcus Hale, stood in front of him. He was missing his right eye. "I buried 2 brothers in this country's name," Marcus said, "but now I can't afford my medication. My daughter sold her bicycle so we could buy groceries last week." Trump didn't interrupt. He just nodded. "I voted for you," Marcus continued. I still believe you care. But, sir, we're hurting. Trump asked for a pen and notepad. For the next 2 hours, he sat with the veterans. No cameras, just stories. He took notes, names, cases, promises. As he left, Marcus asked quietly, Will it matter? Trump paused. Yes, you will not be forgotten. He turned and walked out. But in his mind, Marcus's words burned. We're not looking for sympathy. We're just asking for what we were promised. Lena Brooks was 9 when her mother stopped singing. Her mom, Sergeant Tara Brooks, was a former Army medic who'd once sung lullabies so soft that Lena swore the walls would hum along. But something changed the day their food stamps were cut. Tara sat by the fridge reading the final letter from the Department of Veterans Affairs. The ink was smudged from tears. Support discontinued, it read. Just like that. Lena remembered her mom whispering, I stitched up boys younger than me in war zones, and now I can't even keep the lights on. Lena's favorite song was, You Are My Sunshine. But after that letter, her mother never sang again. One evening, Tara didn't come home from her 3rd shift. Lena stayed up all night holding her mom's dog tags and humming the chorus to herself. The next morning, she opened the door to find her mother collapsed on the porch, exhausted, cold, and still in her work uniform. That same week, Tara sold her medals online to pay for rent. The country she nearly died for had made her feel invisible. And Lena, who once believed heroes were invincible, now saw what silence really sounded like. In a small town in Georgia, the Carter family kept one chair empty at dinner. It was for Elijah. Private first class. Elijah Carter had returned home 3 years ago after serving in Syria, but the war had followed him back, haunting dreams, tremors, long silences. Still, he tried. He applied for counseling. He called the VA hotline. He even stood in line at the town hall for 5 hours to ask for help. But the programs were full, waitlisted, under review. Then came the policy changes. The one Elijah had hoped would speed things up only made things worse. One evening he told his mother, They said I don't qualify, but I can't sleep, Mom. I can't breathe sometimes. She held his hand, told him it would be okay. The next morning Elijah was gone. Now every night his family sets his plate. His younger brother says grace. And his father, once proud and strong, just stares at the chair. The president never met Elijah, but the name now sat in bold ink on Trump's notepad, underlined twice. That night, Trump picked up his phone and made a quiet call. We've failed them, he said. Tell me how we fix this, now. Darnell White hadn't taken the flag out in years. It was folded tightly in a glass case, edges crisp, stars bright. It had flown over his base in Baghdad, then followed him home when shrapnel left his left arm paralyzed. He used to hang it on the porch every 4th of July. But not anymore. When his benefits stopped, Darnell didn't get angry. He got quiet. His daughter noticed. Daddy, why don't you wear your uniform for Veterans Day like you used to? He couldn't answer. They had sold their second car, then the fridge, then the dining table. Still, he didn't complain. Until his daughter came home from school and said, My teacher said if Trump really loved veterans, you wouldn't be sad all the time. Darnell didn't say anything. That night he went to the closet, took out the flag, sat on the floor and stared at it. He didn't blame Trump. He blamed how fast the system forgot its heroes. He just wanted someone to remember. And hundreds of miles away in a quiet corner of the White House, Trump added Darnell's name to the list, a list that was now longer than he ever imagined. For weeks, Trump had refused to speak about the cuts on camera. He wanted to hear the full truth first. But after reading story after story, he finally stood behind a podium, not with applause, but with silence. No teleprompter, no script. He looked into the camera and said, "I've heard you." Behind him sat a group of veterans, men and women with missing limbs, tired eyes, folded hands. No one smiled. He spoke slowly. "There's a little boy named Billy who's worried his father might give up. There's a mother who stopped singing. A man who stares at an empty chair every night." He paused. "We didn't break promises because we don't care. We broke them because we failed to listen." His voice cracked slightly. "But I am listening now." He turned and looked at the veterans behind him. "Your names are not just files. You are not numbers. You are stories I've read, tears I've felt. I can't undo what's happened, but I can fix what's next." The room was still, and for the first time in weeks, a Marine in the front row slowly stood and saluted, not the politician, but the man trying to make it right. They came by the hundreds, wheelchairs, crutches, service dogs, old uniforms that didn't quite fit anymore. Veterans marched silently down Constitution Avenue, not in protest, but in hope. At the front walked Marcus Hale, his eye patch gleaming in the sun. Behind him, Sarah Delaney wheeled herself forward, her daughter beside her holding a sign that read, "We believe in change. We believe in you." It wasn't anger that filled the streets. It was pain woven with dignity. Trump watched from a side window, hand over his mouth. No chants, no yelling. Just the sound of boots, wheels, and faith. The cameras captured everything. Reporters whispered that something strange was happening. People weren't just marching for justice. They were marching for healing. When Trump stepped outside to meet them, there were no speeches. Just silence. Sarah reached out and shook his hand. "My benefits are still gone," she said softly. "But thank you for showing up." Trump looked her in the eyes. "Not just showing up," he said. "I'm staying until it's fixed." One man saluted, then another. Then a wave of silent salutes followed. And for the first time in a long time, Washington didn't feel cold. It felt human. The room was packed, but it felt like no one breathed. Robert Thompson, Billy's dad, stood at the microphone. He wore a faded army jacket and held his son's letter in his hand. "This was written by an 11-year-old, he began, voice shaking. "I didn't know he sent it. I didn't know my son thought I was going to give up." The room fell still. "I came back with scars on the outside," he continued, "but it's the ones on the inside that no one sees. When my benefits stopped, so did my therapy. The nightmares came back. My wife sold her wedding ring so we could pay for my meds." He paused, eyes glassy. "I don't hate anyone. Especially not you, Mr. President. But I need you to understand. We believed in you because we needed someone to believe in us." Trump was seated front row. He didn't blink. Robert stepped away from the mic and looked at his son, who sat clutching his mother's hand. "I'm still here because of that boy." As he walked back to his seat, Trump stood, and with quiet strength, he shook Robert's hand. "Your son reminded me what this fight is really about," he said. The White House was dark. Most of the staff had gone home. But Trump sat at his desk, sleeves rolled up, staring at a binder filled with handwritten testimonies. One by one, he read each letter, each cry for help, each folded photograph tucked inside. He read about a father who took his own life after losing his housing voucher. A mother who now slept in her car beside her medals. A medic who hadn't been able to refill his heart medication in 3 weeks. The weight of it pressed against him. These weren't numbers on a chart. These were promises broken. He pulled out Billy's letter again. The last line played in his mind like a whisper. "If you can't save my dad, I'll try." He leaned back, exhausted. Then he picked up the phone. "Wake the team," he said. "All of them. We're changing course. No more delays." "But sir," a staffer yawned, "it's past midnight." I said now. He paused, voice firm but soft. "These people gave their lives to protect us. The least we can do is give them back their dignity before we lose something we can't fix." That night no one slept. The sun had just started rising when Trump answered a call himself. "Is this the president?" the voice asked. It was shaky, soft, worn. "Yes," he said. "This is Maria Ellis. My husband died last year, Navy for 22 years. Trump sat up straighter. "I never called before," she said. "I didn't think anyone would care. But after seeing you with those veterans yesterday, I just wanted to say thank you." There was a pause. "But I also want to ask something." Trump waited. Why did it take letters from children? Why did it take marches? We were silent for so long, and now we're drowning. Her voice cracked. "They sent me a check for $27 last month. That's all, for 22 years of service." Trump didn't interrupt. He let her speak. "I don't want more money," she said finally. "I just want to feel like his sacrifice mattered." A tear rolled down Trump's cheek. He covered the receiver. Then he whispered, "It does. I promise you, it does." He hung up and immediately called his chief of staff. "No more speeches, no more stalling. I want this fixed, and I want every widow personally called, starting with Maria Ellis." In rural Ohio, a pawn shop owner unlocked a small glass case and gently lifted a Purple Heart medal. "Another one?" his assistant asked. The owner nodded. This one belonged to Dennis Wyatt, a Vietnam veteran. He'd left the medal in exchange for just $60. Dennis hadn't wanted to. But his refrigerator was empty, and his power had already been shut off once this winter. He walked home with a plastic bag of groceries and a heavy heart. That night he stared at the blank spot on his mantel where the medal once sat. "It used to mean something," he whispered. "Now it's worth less than a tank of gas." His neighbor, a young high school student named Lucas, overheard and secretly posted Dennis's story online. Within hours, it reached the White House. Trump saw the headline, "Veteran Pawns Purple Heart to Eat." He called Dennis personally. "I'm sorry," Trump said. "You shouldn't have to give up your honor to survive." Dennis, shocked, said softly, "Thank you for calling. But what we really need is for someone to keep their word." Trump didn't argue. The next day, Dennis's lights turned back on, and his medal was returned in a velvet box. Trump stood before a crowded room full of veterans, their families, and quietly watching press. He wasn't there to defend the past. He was there to correct it. A new executive order sat in his hand, one drafted not by politicians, but by veterans themselves. "We failed to protect you from the system that forgot your names," he began. "But from this moment forward, that changes." The order restored housing stipends, reopened local VA clinics, and created a direct phone line to the office of the president, for veterans only. No call centers, no waiting lines. Real people, real answers. The crowd didn't cheer. They sat in quiet disbelief. Then, from the back, Sarah Delaney slowly wheeled forward. Her daughter pushed her gently toward the podium. With tears in her eyes, she looked at Trump and said, "This time, please don't forget." He stepped down and walked toward her. "I won't," he said, placing the signed order in her hands. That moment wasn't political. It wasn't staged. It was real. A mother who had given her body for her country. And a leader who, for the first time in a long time, truly showed up. The cameras caught it. But the healing, that had already begun. Billy waited at the front door every day for the mailman. This time it wasn't for toys or birthday cards. It was for hope. His dad, Robert, had been approved for full disability care. Therapy resumed. Medication delivered. Groceries were stocked without worry. There were even talks of a service dog for the nightmares. But what Billy waited for most was something else. On a quiet Wednesday, the mail finally came. Inside the envelope was a hand-signed letter from the president. Dear Billy, thank you for believing in your dad when things got hard, and thank you for reminding me why I became a leader in the first place. Below that, a personal invitation. Come visit me at the White House. I owe you a handshake and a promise I intend to keep. Billy held the letter up to his dad with trembling hands. Robert read it, pulled his son close, and for the first time in months he laughed. A full, warm, deep laugh. Then Billy did too. He didn't need a president to fix everything. He just needed someone to care. And in that moment, across the country, millions saw what real leadership could look like. The new wing of the VA in Atlanta was quiet that morning. Staff walked slowly. Visitors whispered. At the far end of the corridor, they had built something special, the Wall of Promises. It wasn't made of marble. It wasn't built to impress. It was built to remember. Each name etched in gold belonged to a veteran who'd been denied benefits before the reform. Some were alive, others were not, but all were honored now. Trump stood in front of the wall, alone, running his fingers across the names. He stopped at one. Elijah Carter, the father who used to stare at an empty chair. He pressed his hand against the name. A VA worker walked up beside him. His little brother's here today, she whispered. He asked to meet you. Trump turned, and there stood a young boy holding a folded flag, his hands shaking. Trump knelt and looked him in the eye. We didn't forget Elijah, he said, because people like him built the soul of this country. The boy nodded, tears falling. He just wanted someone to listen. Trump placed his hand on the boy's shoulder. I hear him now. Darnell White stepped onto the porch of his new home, government-funded, mortgage-free, and built for disabled veterans. He ran his fingers along the railing and turned to his daughter, who was smiling wide. This is real? She asked. He nodded slowly, tears welling up. Yeah, baby. This time, it's real. Inside, a warm kitchen waited, a fridge full, a couch, a small music player already playing You Are My Sunshine. He froze. Sarah Delaney had recorded it. Veterans from across the country had sent each other gifts. Some sent books. Others sent old uniforms to display proudly again. Some, like Sarah, sent back something even deeper, her voice. For the first time in years, Darnell unfolded the American flag again. This time, not in shame, but in healing. His daughter stood on a step and helped him hang it high. As the flag caught the wind, a white envelope fell from the mailbox. Inside was a simple card. Thank you for holding on. DT. That night, veterans in every state sat around dinner tables with family again, no longer invisible. And slowly, one by one, they began to feel something they thought they'd lost forever. Home. Billy Thompson stood at the front of the White House lawn, holding a microphone almost too big for his hands. He was only 11, but that day, he looked like a soldier. Behind him were hundreds of veterans. In front of him, news cameras, and beside him, President Trump. Billy took a breath. My dad's doing better now. He smiles again. And I don't sleep with the lights on anymore. Laughter, then silence. I wrote a letter because I didn't know what else to do. I thought nobody would listen. He looked up at Trump. But someone did. Trump stepped forward, placed a hand on Billy's shoulder, and turned to the crowd. You saved your father's life, Billy, and maybe you saved mine too. The crowd rose. Veterans saluted. Some wept. Billy raised his hand awkwardly in return, and Trump gently helped him finish the motion. A single trumpet began to play. Flags waved, not out of protest, but out of pride, and for once, the air felt light again. If this story moved you, if you felt the pain, the healing, and the hope, please hit that like button. Share your story in the comments below, especially if you or someone you love has served. And subscribe for more real stories that lift up the unheard voices of our heroes, because healing starts with listening. And you just did that, all the way to the end. Thank you.